Liberalism. Liberalism is like that cool rebel at the political party. It says that power shouldn't only belong to kings because they are chosen by God. Instead, it liked the idea of everyone being equal and having a say in how things are run. Liberalism is all about people having rights, being free, and not letting the government control everything. This idea became really popular fast. It sparked big revolutions like the Glorious Revolution in England, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Haitian Revolution. Nowadays, liberalism is like the main political idea. It works well with market economies, caring about protecting people's property rights and letting the economy do its thing without too much government involvement. In the late 20th century, liberalism's ideas also inspired something called neoliberalism, which is like a super focused version on the free market and privatization. Canada is a liberal country on ice. They have policies promoting individual freedoms. They also have a strong social safety net and inclusive values. Conservatism. Conservatism is like that friend who refuses to try the new trendy snack because they're convinced grandma's cookies are the only real deal. They're all about keeping things as they are, thinking, why fix what's not broken? They believe humans aren't perfect, and they want to stick to traditions and the natural order of society. Conservatism started because people didn't like the big changes happening during the French Revolution. For example, the rejection of hereditary monarchies. This political ideology emerged in a bid to uphold the social order. Whilst many ideologies seek reform, conservatism is strong in its belief that change is not necessary. Sweden is a prime example of a country experiencing conservatism. Fascism. Figuring out fascism is tough, like trying to catch a slippery fish. People nowadays often use the word to talk about any strict right-wing political move. So instead of being its own fancy theory, think of fascism like a term we use for certain historical examples, like Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. Fascism doesn't see violence as always bad. It thinks things like taking over other countries, using force in politics, and going to war can make a nation stronger. Fascists often want one powerful party ruling everything and a hands-on economy to make their country self-sufficient. They believe in being very strict and nationalistic, sometimes even believing in a master race. This has led them to do really awful things like mass killings, deportations, and discrimination against certain groups. In World War II, the fascist Axis powers caused the death of millions of people with their harsh and imperialistic plans. People don't like to call themselves fascists these days because the whole idea has a bad reputation. Instead, the term is usually used as an insult by political opponents. Anarchism. Anarchism became a thing in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. Anarchists supported the revolution, but they were the rebels who said, nah, we're not into the whole government sharing powers. They thought all kinds of governments were bad and oppressive. Anarchists are all about human freedom and independence, thinking these things can't really happen with any kind of government. Anarchists think we shouldn't have any bosses or leaders, unless there's a good reason for it, like having an experienced heart surgeon do a tricky operation. In real life, anarchists like to shake things up by using direct action to show how society could work without the governments calling the shots. They might protest, take over places, go on strikes, or even do a bit of property makeover to challenge the political big shots. Anarchists prefer everyone having a say in decisions, like a team where everyone's opinion counts the same. They also like things organized in a do-it-yourself way and spread out, so it's not all controlled by one big power. Democracy. In democracy, the power to run the government is given to the people or everyone in the state. The United Nations says democracy is like having a system where human rights and freedoms are respected, and the decisions are made based on what the people freely want. Democracy has changed a lot over time. In the old days, people would directly make decisions in a group. Nowadays, most people use representative democracy, where citizens pick leaders to make decisions for themselves. In democracies, decisions are often made by what most people want, but sometimes they use other rules to make sure everyone is included and things are fair. In liberal democracies, there are rules to protect individual rights, like freedom of speech, and a court to make sure the majority doesn't boss everyone around. Democracy contrasts with political ideologies, where power is held by an individual. One prominent example of a country practicing democracy is the United States, where citizens participate in regular elections to choose their representatives at various levels of government. Socialism. Socialism is a political idea that doesn't really like capitalism. It started during the Industrial Revolution when things were changing a lot. A guy named Karl Marx had a big impact on socialist thinking. But the idea of socialism goes way back to ancient Greece. Socialism wants to create something different from capitalism. It likes the ideas of people working together and everyone being equal in society. Socialists also want to get rid of the idea of different classes of people. Socialist parties and thoughts are still around, and they have different amounts of power in different places. This political ideology even led some countries. Socialists can be focused on the world or just their own country. They organize through political parties, sometimes work with trade unions, and can be in both rich and poor countries. Socialism is all about people working together, treating everyone the same, and letting workers have a say. Cuba practices socialism. The government takes care of most things, like industries and services, to make sure everyone gets what they need. Multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is when we recognize and support different cultural groups in society. It's like identifying everyone as unique, and we should make sure everyone feels included. Multiculturalism helps deal with challenges that come up when there's a mix of cultures and when some groups might feel left out. Some folks say multiculturalism isn't a complete set of ideas on its own. Instead, it's more like a place where people argue about different beliefs. Still, even though it might not have its own big ideology, it's always talked about when people study political ideas. Multiculturalism is like a cool mixtape with a lot of different themes, but still being together. It became more popular because of people moving around the world. The end of the Second World War, colonialism, and the fall of communism. The main ideas of multiculturalism are about recognizing everyone's uniqueness, their identity, having lots of different things, and making sure minority groups have their rights. Canada practices multiculturalism. They like and include lots of different cultures. People from all over bring their traditions, making it a mix. Communism. Communists want a community where people run things themselves, but they don't all agree on how to make it happen. Some prefer a more free approach, like letting workers manage things on their own. Others lean towards a stronger, organized way, with a socialist state that eventually fades away. Communism sits on the left side of the political spectrum, close to socialism. People call it the radical left. Communism began in Europe when people were upset with how capitalism treated workers. In the 1900s, some countries like the Soviet Union followed communism. About 1/3 of the world's population lived under communist rule. These governments had one ruling party, didn't like private property or capitalism, and controlled many aspects of life. After the Soviet Union fell in 1991, many countries stopped being communist. Today, only a few, like China and North Korea, still say they're communist. The decline of communism is blamed on economic problems and governments becoming too strict. Populism. Populism is a kind of politics that talks a lot about the people and likes to say they're different from the elite. This ideology is not a big fan of the usual way things are done in politics. The word started in the late 1800s and is used to describe different politicians, and some people who study politics have different ideas about what populism really means. Populism can mix with other ideas like nationalism, liberalism, or socialism. So you can find populists on different parts of the political spectrum. Italy has experienced periods of political populism, with leaders like Matteo Salvini gaining popularity by emphasizing a direct connection with the people, addressing their concerns, and often challenging established political norms. Leaders in countries like Hungary and the Philippines, such as Viktor Orban and Rodrigo Duterte, use populist strategies in their policies. Nationalism. Nationalism is a belief that says being loyal to your country is more important than caring about any individual or group. It started in the late 1700s during the French Revolution, when people decided being part of a nation was more crucial than having a king or ruler. Nationalism can be seen as good or bad depending on what it aims for and what happens. Sometimes it's linked to movements fighting for freedom and fairness, or it encourages pride in a nation's accomplishments. On the flip side, it's been used to justify separating people based on race, ethnicity, or religion, mistreating minorities, and going against human rights and democratic traditions. Sadly, it has even played a role in starting wars, like the ones in World War I and World War II.